Hello, guys, and welcome to today's session. Today, we are going to talk about hybrid autopilot. So, guys, before we do a deep dive into what hybrid Azure AD Join Autopilot is, I seriously hope that you have had a chance to go through the previous nugget wherein I have discussed the normal autopilot. So this is in a way build up on the previous nugget, and the assumption is, or the prerequisite of watching this nugget is that you should have gone through the normal autopilot deployment. So this is just a build up or an add on to the previous nugget. Okay. So now that being said, let's just move ahead and take a look over today's agenda. So in this nugget, first we are going to take a overview and talk about what a normal autopilot is. We are just going to do a quick brush up on what autopilot is, why do we need it, how do we do it from Intune. Then we will talk about the prerequisites for doing an hybrid autopilot from Intune. How we can do it, we will talk about that. What we can customize using autopilot, this is something that we have already discussed, but we'll just briskly walk through it. What is a device life cycle? Then we will this is what the agenda of this nugget is. The new feature in autopilot which has been introduced since Windows 10 1809, the hybrid Azure AD join autopilot feature. We will talk about that. We will talk about the flow. We will talk about the admin tasks which an Intune admin has to follow in order to set up an hybrid Azure AD join autopilot. We will talk about the end user experience, and we will realize how an hybrid Azure AD join autopilot differs from a normal autopilot as far as the setup is concerned from admin's end, and as far as the end user's experience is concerned. And then we will do a live demo wherein we will set up the entire thing from scratch. Okay. All right. So just a quick overview what autopilot is and why do we need autopilot. As I've already said, guys, there is something just magical about us opening up a laptop, getting a brand new device, powering it on, and the device automagically knowing who we are and getting us into a business ready state. That is what exactly the autopilot does, and that is what the exact intent of using autopilot is. It's used to make the device a smart device, and the device knows who we are. It embodies the essence of M365 because the device is becoming business ready. The device is getting all the office applications as well, and all the user is doing is he's just powering on the laptop, entering his username and password, and that's it. The advantage of using autopilot, as we have already discussed, gone are the days wherein the IT admin would make up a golden image or an ISO, and then he would uh, boot the device using that ISO, and then all the layers would be there. First, he would be installing the operating system, then the drivers, then the firmwares, then the applications, and then he would just build up that stack. No longer that is required. We no longer need to have a custom image. Autopilot takes care of all of that. Since Autopilot is doing that, it is reducing the overhead of the IT, and the cost incurred in re-imaging the devices is almost zero. It helps us to provision new devices minus the hassle, and it adds new capabilities to the zero touch experience. So all the user is doing is just pressing the power on button, and the device is getting ready. It's much easier to deploy the machines, and the experience is just magical because the machine is directly shipping to the end user. The machine never comes to the IT admin. The machine directly goes to the end user, he powers it on, and the device is ready. The device is secured, the device is compliant, the device has all the applications, all the policies, everything is there out of the box, if you would call it. So what autopilot does is, in a nutshell, makes the device business ready, makes the device smart, customizes the out of the box experience, and brings the device to a state wherein the device is usable as per the company standard, just out of the box without any or minimal IT intervention. Okay, so well, just a brief overview. What is Autopilot? It is modern management collection of technologies. It involves Intune, it involves Azure, it involves O365, it involves Windows, and cloud-based services that MS is providing for IT. Out of the device comes out of the box, and the device is ready to go. Extends the usability to device reset scenarios as well. So it is not just a new fresh device. If it's a used device as well, Autopilot can still be deployed to that device, and we are good to go. Okay. All right. All right. What Autopilot is not, we have already discussed that we are just customizing the device. We are just making the device business ready. However, there needs to be an operating system already on the device. So it is not equal to OSD via SECM or MDT. We cannot deploy the operating system. If the operating system is already there, we can configure it, customize it, make it business ready. Okay, now we are going to talk about the prerequisites for Hybrid Azure AD Join Autopilot. And probably this is wherein we are going to be Nugget specific, and this is the actual agenda of talking about Hybrid Azure AD Join Autopilot. So you can from here start doing a comparison between the previous Nugget as well. The first prerequisite, and this would also be a difference between a normal autopilot and a Hybrid Azure AD Join Autopilot, is that the device needs to run with Windows 10 version 1809 or greater. Okay, the user needs to have an AAD P1 license, which is there in both the cases, normal autopilot or Hybrid Azure AD Join Autopilot. Auto enrollment needs to be enabled. User must be allowed to join devices to Azure AD. Device should be in direct line of sight with the domain controller. We will explore and do a deep dive into this prerequisite. But yeah, this is a mandate, and again, this you can also say that this is a difference between a normal autopilot and a hybrid Azure AD autopilot. The device needs to be in direct line of sight with the domain controller. We will discuss what exactly I mean by direct line of sight, but yeah, just keep this in mind. Company portal branding needs to be configured, not a prerequisite, but yes, if it is configured, then the end user can actually see that okay, the autopilot device has taken effect on the device. Microsoft Intune should be there, or any other MDM. We are going to focus on Microsoft Intune for now. The device should be able to reach to the Intune service, meaning that the device should have internet access, or even if it has got only intranet access, the firewall and the proxy should be able to route the device directly to the, and even if the device only has intranet access, the firewall and the proxy should be able to route the device directly to the Intune service without any blockage of the ports. Okay. Ways to do autopilot, we have already discussed this. It can be done from Intune, it can be done from Microsoft Store for Business, it can be done from Microsoft 365 Business and O365 Admin Portal. This is what we are going to focus on, and this is what the agenda of this nugget is. Okay. End user experience, okay, we have already spoken about this. Using autopilot, we are customizing the out of the box experience. There are some things that we can customize, and there are some things which we cannot customize. So these three things are something which we cannot customize. It is applicable for normal autopilot as well as for hybrid Azure AD Join Autopilot. Language, location, and keyboard will always come for the user to choose. However, these are something which can be customized, like the end user license agreement, privacy, computer template, Cortana, automatic setup for work or school, and signing experience, company branding. Okay. Also guys, we already know that if we have a company branding in place, what company branding does is when the user is prompted for the username, it by default says that welcome to Contoso or welcome to your tenants. The tenant name will be displayed if the company branding is there. So if I'm the end user, I'm powering on my device for the first time, if I see that welcome to Contoso, then I know that okay, my device has got the autopilot profile from my organization. However, without the autopilot profile, it would just say sign in with your Microsoft account. It would give you an option that whether you want to domain join it instead. Okay. Finally, your device life cycle. This is also something that we have already discussed in normal autopilot. A vendor automatically registers the device. The IT admin goes to the portal and customizes the out of the box for the users. The device is delivered directly to the end user. The end user powers on and logs into the device, and the device becomes business ready. Okay. All right. So now let's just get to the point. The new feature in Intune that is delivering hybrid Azure AD join autopilot. So now let's just first try and find out what exactly does this term mean. Hybrid Azure AD join autopilot. The device is going to be an autopilot device, meaning that we will be customizing the out of the box and then the ESP page and whatever we did in the previous Nugget. But the device is going to be hybrid Azure AD join. What does hybrid Azure AD join mean? Just in case we are not familiar with the term, if first of all, hybrid Azure AD join is something that we can do to Windows devices only. It is not applicable on Android or iOS devices because the device has to be joined to has to be joined. Joined where? If a device is joined to the Azure AD and the device is joined to the on-prem AD, then that scenario is referred to as the hybrid Azure AD join. As the name suggests, hybrid means combination of two, correct? So in this case, we are referring it to as hybrid Azure AD join because it is joined to the Azure and the device is also joined to the on-prem. It's joined to both the locations, therefore the word hybrid. In normal autopilot, the device is only joined to Azure. So the device is Azure AD joined, but not on-prem joined. However, we might have a scenario, however, we have an option of joining a device to both the places, joining it to the on-prem and joining it to the Azure. Just a little background. How do we join a device to the on-prem? We already know that we go into we go into start and then settings, and then we go to the properties of the computer, and then we go into settings, and then it gives us that option of joining it to a workplace or joining it to the domain. You join it to the domain, it asks you for the name of the domain wherein you want to join it to. That is how we do a on-prem join. How do we do a Azure AD join? If you're just doing an Azure AD join, you have to go to start and then settings and then access work or school and then info and then connect. You'll enter the username and at the bottom you will get an option, you will get an hyperlink which says that join this device to Azure AD. That does an Azure AD join. Now, how do we do an hybrid Azure AD join? If we are going to do an hybrid Azure AD join, we will that means we have to join it to both these two places. So first we will do an on-prem join. We do an on-prem join the normal way. Once the on-prem join is done, then we use a tool called Azure AD Connect. So there is no manual way of doing an hybrid Azure AD join. Hybrid Azure AD join has to be done using a tool called Azure AD Connect. So we install that tool. It's the same tool which is used for syncing our users from our on-prem to the cloud. The same tool does the hybrid Azure AD join. So what we do is we install the tool. The tool in the tool we have a radio button which we have to check. We will see that later on, which and that button says that whether you want to enable or not enable hybrid Azure AD join for your tenant for your domain. Once you do that, all your computer objects are synced to the Azure and your devices become hybrid Azure AD join. So long story short, when we are talking about hybrid Azure AD join autopilot, we mean that the device is going to be Azure AD joined and on-prem joined, hence the word hybrid. Okay, that's the only difference between normal autopilot and hybrid Azure AD join autopilot. Okay, all right. All right, so normal autopilot plus on-prem domain join is hybrid Azure AD join autopilot. Okay, and so we have a normal autopilot. We are going to push. So the way we achieve this, scenario wherein we do an autopilot and an on-prem domain join, this part, the on-prem domain join, is actually carried out by sending a device configuration profile. So just in case, guys, you have seen the Intune portal, when we make a device configuration profile, one of the options is offline domain join. So that is the kind of device configuration profile that we have to make. So once the device is autopiloted, The device is enrolled to Intune and Azure AD joined. Once that happens, we can push any policies profiles from Intune. One of the profiles that we will be pushing is device configuration profile. The device configuration profile is going to be of the type of offline domain join. Yeah, and then this offline domain join profile takes care of joining the device to the on-prem domain. Once the device is joined to the on-prem domain, the device was already normal autopilot, then we reach to this status of hybrid Azure AD join. Okay. All right, perfect. Now let's just take a look over the background flow, as in what exactly happens during a hybrid Azure AD join autopilot right from the scratch. So, all right. So this is a diagram. I know that it is not very fancy, but this is as good as I could have. I was able to make it in MS Paint. So this device is actually, I mean, this diagram is trying to actually illustrate step-by-step process of how an hybrid Azure AD join autopilot works or functions. Okay. The first thing that happens is that the end admin goes to the Intune portal and uploads the hardware hash. Okay, so the admin will be getting the hardware hash from the end user's device. I mean, it doesn't matter how he's getting it. There are a couple of ways of getting that. We will be seeing that during the demonstration. And if you have seen the previous Nugget, we already know that hardware hash is something which we need. Okay, and we were uploading the hardware hash in the previous cases as well. So the administrator goes to the Intune portal, uploads the hardware hash. The administrator creates the autopilot profile, and in the autopilot profile, as he was creating it in the previous Nugget as well, he has a selection to make whether he wants to make a normal autopilot profile or whether he wants to make an hybrid Azure AD join autopilot profile. So in this case, he will be creating an hybrid Azure AD join autopilot profile. And finally, the admin will be creating a device configuration profile, and this device configuration profile is of the type offline domain join. So it's the usual way. We have to go to Microsoft Intune device configuration, create a new profile for Windows, and the drop down we will be selecting the option offline domain join. Or I think it's just domain join. So we will be seeing what exactly we have to configure in that, but this is what the admin has to do, and this is what the first step is. Once the admin uploads the hardware hash onto the Intune portal, it actually talks with the autopilot service, and in that autopilot service, it actually talks to the device discovery service. So again, what we are doing is in the Intune portal, we are uploading the hardware hash. Once we upload the hardware hash, the Intune service talks with the autopilot service. And in the autopilot service, it actually speaks with the device discovery service. And what device discovery service does is it creates a ZTD ID for that entry. ZTD ID stands for Zero Touch Deployment ID. So if you may call it, this part is the autopilot service. Okay, so this is the Intune service, this is the autopilot service, this is the admin. So the admin uploaded the hardware hash in the Intune service. Intune service spoke to the autopilot service, specifically to the device discovery service, and the device discovery service created a ZTD ID for the device. Now the device discovery service will talk with the device registration service of the Azure AD. What this does is the device discovery service talks to the device registration service of the Azure AD, and it creates or it pre-populates a record in the Azure AD for that device. Okay, a pre-populated record of the device is created and an object is created in the Azure. So if you have done the practical of, and this is applicable for hybrid Azure AD as well as for normal Azure AD autopilot as well. So if you have done the normal autopilot practical before, you would have noticed that once we import the CSV, which contains the hardware hash, into the Intune portal, then if we go to Azure AD, we are able to see an entry of entry of a device over there, and the entry of the device is created with the serial number of the device which was present in the CSV that we uploaded, even though the device right now is not powered on. So even if the device is not powered on, even if the device is nowhere there, as soon as the Intune admin uploads the hardware hash, the entry or the device object gets created in the Azure. So this is how that flow happens. Intune service talks with the device discovery service. The device discovery service in the Autopilot talks creates a ZTD ID, and it then talks with the device registration service in the Azure, and it creates a device object. Okay, so now that the device has a ZTD ID, what the Intune admin can also do is create a dynamic group over here, and in the dynamic group he can query for all the ZTD IDs in the environment. What that would do, that would add this device object onto that group. Okay, so the admin will not have to add it manually one by one. Okay, so the first step was admin uploading the hardware hash into the Intune service. The second, and in the background, the Intune service talking with the Autopilot service, specifically with the device discovery service, and the ZTD ID getting created, and then the DDS service talking with the DRS service in the Azure, and then creating an object in the Azure, and that object getting uh, becoming a part of the dynamic group that we have created. Okay, that would be the second step. Now the third step is the end user powers on the laptop for the very first time. When the end user powers on the laptop in the very first time, the autopilot DLL in this device will realize that this is an autopilot device, and it will talk with the DDS service. Okay, in the autopilot, it will talk with the DDS service. So uh, 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 the device, because of the autopilot.dll, is speaking to the DDS service. Okay, the DDS service has already created a ZTD ID for the device, so that ZTD ID was created for this device object, and the device is already a part of this group, and this group is actually being targeted by this autopilot profile. So the DDS service fetches the autopilot profile and deploys it to the device. So this autopilot profile that we have created has now come down to this device. This is where we are at the end of stage 3. Okay, so the autopilot profile has come down to the device. When the autopilot profile comes down to the device, if you remember, when we make an autopilot profile, we have an option of pre-assigning a user to a device. If we do that, then the end user does not have to enter the username, he just has to enter the password, and the device is going to be displayed with the customized company portal branding. Okay, so the autopilot profile has come down to the device as of this moment, as of step 3. And once the autopilot profile came down, the device is able to see the customized company branding page. The end user enters the username and password. Once the username and password is entered, the authentication is done. So the request, right now the request is being sent to the Azure. He is entering the username and password. The authentication is being done by Azure. Once the authentication is done, then the device is going to get enrolled to Intune if all the prerequisites are made. So the step 5 is authentication done. The device is now enrolled in Intune. The device is Azure AD registered. The device is enrolled to Intune. Everything is fine. This is how a normal autopilot would also have worked until this point. Hardware hash uploaded, user powers on the device for the first time, and autopilot profile comes down to the device. Company portal branding is displayed. User enters the username, password, authentication done by Azure. The device gets Azure AD registered, enrolled to Intune. So far, so good. Okay. Now, this is from wherein the magic happens for the hybrid Azure AD join autopilot. So as I said, out of all the profiles that we have created over here, one of the profile is the offline domain join profile, which is like kind of a device configuration profile. So now, given that this device is enrolled to Intune, another that device configuration profile here you can see in brown is going to get delivered to the device. Okay. Uh, okay, not in brown, in violet. So this is the step 6 is where we are at. So Intune pushes the policies apps to the enrolled device. One of the policies device configuration that the device has got is the offline domain join profile. Okay, so it's a device configuration profile which is just getting delivered to a normally enrolled device. So the device has got that offline domain join profile. There in that offline domain join profile, we mentioned few attributes, as in we mention the name of the domain controller, we mention the name of the OU wherein the machine is going to get located in the on-prem, and we mention the naming convention which the device has to follow. Okay, so right now the device is enrolled and a device configuration profile has come down to the device. Okay, the device has got no idea what to do with it. Therefore, when the device receives the ODJ policy, it requests for a ODJ blob from the Intune service. The ODJ offline domain join blob is the blob which is responsible for joining the device to the on-prem domain. The device just received a device configuration policy. The device did not know what to do with it. Therefore, the device is going to reach back to the Intune service and request for a ODJ blob. Okay, so now that is what is happening in step 7. Now in step 8, the Intune service will actually talk with the on-prem server. So this ODJ blob will be provided by the domain controller, right? The domain controller can only join a machine to the on-prem domain. However, this machine cannot directly request for the ODJ blob from the domain controller because this machine doesn't know where the domain controller is. And therefore, this machine reaches out to Intune. Again, Intune cannot directly reach back to the domain controller because Intune is an internet, domain controller is an intranet. Therefore, we have a man in the middle, and this man in the middle is a server which has to be running on on server 2K16 or later, wherein we install the AD connector. So there's a special type of connector that we have to install for this entire setup to work, and this connector is installed in this 2K16 server. So this 2K16 server actually acts as a man in the middle. So let's just track our steps back. What happened? This device got enrolled to Intune and got a device configuration policy. The device had no idea what to do with the device configuration policy, which was a ODJ offline domain join configuration policy. So it realized that it needs to request for a offline domain join blob from the domain controller, but the device cannot directly reach out to the domain controller. Therefore, device reached out to the Intune service. Intune service cannot reach out directly to the domain controller because it's in the internet. Domain controller is in the intranet. Therefore, device will reach out to the 2K16 server, which is present in the same domain as the domain controller. And this server needs to have access to the internet as well as to the intranet. Okay, this is like that man in the middle. And how will the Intune service know where this server is? It is because we install this connector and we sign into that connector using a credential from here. So when we do that, this connector shows online over here. Therefore, the Intune service will fetch that information, locate that server, that on-prem server, and go over there. So the step 8 is Intune reaches out to the on-prem Active Directory connector. Okay, once it reaches out to the Active Directory connector, connector will now forward that request to the domain controller. The connector will forward that request to the on-prem domain controller, that ODJ blob request, and it's now domain controller's responsibility to create a computer object of that domain. So this is wherein the computer object. So okay, just a little background. Let's just say this machine has to be joined onto this domain, right? So whenever a machine is joined to a domain, may that be computer, may that be a server, may that be, I mean, may that be a server or may that be a server or a client OS. Whenever a machine is joined to the domain controller, and computer object of that device is created in the domain, right? So it's created in a specific OU, right? So this is what is happening right now. Intune service reach out to the 2K16 server. 2K16 will reach out to the domain controller, and let's just say that there were many OUs over here. In a specific OU, a computer object for this computer will be created. A computer object for this computer will be created in this OU. Okay, so we have to make sure there are a few prerequisites for this to happen. We have to make sure that this computer has access over this OU, because it is this computer, or this server rather, it is this server which is creating this computer object. So onto whichever OU the object has to be created, this server needs to have access. Okay, so well, what I'm trying to get at is the connector with the privilege creates a computer object in the delegated OU. Once that is step 9. Step 10 is that using the djoin.exe, a blob is created and connector uploads it to the Intune. So the domain controller is going to create that blob which the end device was looking out for in order to join itself to the domain. The device is still not domain joined. Please keep this in mind. The end device is still not on-prem domain joined. The end device was looking out for a ODJ blob from this device, which is going to be used to join it to the on-prem domain. It reached out to the Intune. Intune reached out to 2K16. 2K16 reached out to domain controller. Domain controller is going to create that blob and give it to 2K16 server and create that computer object in its OU. The DJ, the .exe which creates the blob is sent to the Intune service in step 11, and in step 12 Intune delivers the blob to the device. So now the device has the blob which it is going to use to join itself to the on-prem domain. As of this moment, this device is only Azure AD registered, Azure AD joined, but not on-prem joined. However, a computer object of this device is created in this OU. Okay, now this device knows what is the location of this domain controller. So now this device will try to do a silent ping to the domain controller. Okay, therefore it is imperative that this device, if you remember in when we were talking about the prerequisite, one of the prerequisite was that the device needs to be in direct line of sight with the domain controller. So I think it was this one. Yeah, device should be in direct line of sight with the domain controller. This is the reason, because once it is getting the ODJ blob from the domain controller via the Intune service in step 13, it is actually doing a silent ping to the domain controller. So if you are over the internet, this device will not be able to ping the domain controller. If you are on the intranet, you will be able to ping the device over the domain controller, right? Or if you have a if you're in the lab environment and you have and the device and this computer, this end machine has a intranet NIC as well as an internet NIC, then using the intranet NIC it can talk with the domain controller, and using the internet NIC it can talk with the Intune service. Okay, so in step 13 it does a silent ping to the domain controller to make sure that it's able to reach to the domain controller, and if it's able to reach out to the domain controller, only then at this point of time the device gets on-prem domain joined and the device undergoes a reboot. So device will undergo a reboot and it will be on-prem domain joined. Okay, so now once the device is on-prem domain joined, device is joined to the on-prem domain, the user logs into this device. He can log in using the on-prem domain credentials, and domain controller will authenticate it, and the device will receive the local group policy. Okay, just one more thing. If you guys remember, the request for ODJ blob from the device went to the Intune service. From Intune services went to a 2K16 server. From 2K16 server, it went to the domain controller. Okay, that in the domain controller a computer object was created, correct? So this computer in a specific OU, this computer object will be synced to the Azure using Azure AD Connect. So if you guys remember, And that is what does the hybrid Azure AD join. So if you guys remember, I said that if we want to do hybrid Azure AD join, then what we have to do is we have to install the Azure AD Connect tool, and in that Azure AD Connect tool, we have to enable that option of hybrid Azure AD join. When we do that, then the hybrid Azure AD join syncs the computer object to Azure. So this is what the step 10 is. Once this computer object is created, the Azure AD Connect will go into the domain controller, and then it will fetch this computer object and it will sync it to the Azure. So the end status is going to be the device is going to be Azure AD joined, which it was getting joined in normal Autopilot also. The device is going to be on-prem domain joined, hence the word hybrid. The device is going to be Intune enrolled. Once the device is Intune enrolled, all the apps and policies will be pushed down to the device. One of those policies is the offline domain join, which we saw over here. And once the device is on-prem domain joined in step 13, after the silent ping happens, the end user is going to log into the device, and over here all the group policies are going to flow down to the device as well. Okay, so this is the entire step in 14 or in 15 phases. So this is how step by step it will happen. So I mean, this is just a write down of the same what the Intune administrator is doing. In the on-prem server, he's installing the 2K16 server 2K16 connector. So this connector is something which the admin has to install beforehand. Okay, once that is done, he is taking the hardware hash, uploading it into the Intune portal. Once he does that, the device discovery service in the Autopilot creates a ZTD ID for each hardware entry. Once the ZTD ID is created, the DDS service talks to the device registration service in the Azure, and then an object is created in the Azure, and an entry is made in the device serial number. Once the entry is made, we can make a dynamic device group as well, and the device will be auto populated in the group. Now the end user powers on the laptop. Autopilot DLL contacts the device discovery service in Autopilot, and then the Autopilot profile with the customized OOB is deployed to the device with the company branding, which is displayed to the user. The user enters the username password. The end user requests for the authentication from Azure. All the tokens are issued by the Azure. Authentication is done fine. The device is Azure AD joined by the end of this process, and Intune enrolled. So until step 5, it is same as what we would have seen in normal Autopilot as well. From step 6, things differ, because in the profile that we have made in Autopilot, out of all the profiles that we have delivered to the device, we have delivered and device configuration profile as well, which takes care of enrolling a device to Intune, which takes care of on-prem domain join. So it's a domain join profile, and offline domain join profile is one of such profiles. The device receives the offline domain join config profile. In that profile, it sees that okay, there is a name of a domain controller, and that it realizes that it needs to join to an on-prem domain. So it requests for the ODJ blob. However, it cannot request for the ODJ blob directly from the domain controller, because as you remember, this domain controller is there in the intranet. This device is there in the internet. And I mean, this device has got access to both the phases, but it doesn't know where exactly this domain controller is. So it will go to the Intune service. The Intune service will reach out to this server, which is like a man in the middle, and this server will reach out to the domain controller. The Intune, so over here, Intune in step 8, Intune service locates the respective tenant's Intune Active Directory connector. So this connector is what we are installing in that 2K16 server, and then it will forward its ODJ request by the client to that connector. The 2K16 server reaches out to the domain controller, creates a computer object in the delegated OU. The object will be synced. This is the step 10 that we talked about. The object will be synced to the Azure by the Azure AD Connect whenever the next sync happens. The blob is created by the domain controller. It is delivered to the Intune service. The Intune service delivers it to the end device. The end device or the client machine, when it gets the blob, it does a silent ping to the domain controller. If it's able to reach out to the domain controller, it becomes on-prem domain joined. Once it becomes on-prem domain joined, it restarts, it receives a group policy, and the device is now business ready. Okay, so this is the final state. Device is Azure AD joined, on-prem joined. That is hybrid Azure AD state. Device is Intune enrolled. Apps and policies are pushed down to the device. GPU is pushed down to the device. Okay. So I hope that we were able to understand this flow. I tried to break it down into as many steps as possible without, I mean, making it too lengthy. But I hope that this helps us understand the flow. Therefore, if we are able to understand this flow, we will be able to troubleshoot where exactly the flaw is in case the hybrid Azure AD on autopilot is not happening. Okay, so now let's just discuss the admin task which the admin has to take care of. So I know I've discussed few of them in the flow itself, but let's just review them once again. So the admin has to install the Azure AD Connect tool and configure the hybrid Azure AD join. This is a prerequisite. So as I said, you have to install the Azure AD Connect tool, and when you install that, so this is the snippet. You install the Azure AD Connect tool, and then you go to This is the same tool which we are using to sync users as well. So if you are syncing users from your on-prem domain to the cloud, use this tool. Once you've installed it, you have to click on Configure Device Options, and then there is an option to configure the hybrid Azure AD join. So once you do that, then that's the first prerequisite that is met. Then we have to create a OU. So this OU is wherein the computer object of the device is getting created. So this OU, so as you see, this computer object was created in the OU in the domain controller, right? So this is the OU I'm talking about. So we have to create a OU, and in this OU we will delegate permissions of this server, so that because it is this server which is passing on the request. So once we do that, once we delegate this permission, we are saying that this 2K16 server should now be allowed to create an entry in this OU for any computer. That is something which we'll have to do manually. So create a OU to contain the Autopilot devices, delegate permissions to the computer hosting the Intune connector, that is the 2K16 server, to create manage computer objects in the OU, install the Intune connector for Active Directory. This is what the connector that we're installing in the 2K16 server. Upload the device hash to the Intune, creates an hybrid Azure AD on Autopilot profile, and creates a ODJ profile. Okay, so how to get the hardware hash? These are the commands. So first we have to set the execution policy to unrestricted or to bypass, and then we have to install the Windows Autopilot info script, and we have to run it. So these are PowerShell commands, same as what we saw in the previous Nugget. Once you run this command, you get the serial number of the device, and this is what we are uploading in the Intune portal in CSV format. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is just a snippet of how it looks while extracting the hardware hash. We will see this in the demo. So first we are setting it to unrestricted, and then we are installing the script. Once the script is installed, then we are getting the output of the script in a CSV file. Okay, once that is done, I mean, this is a snippet of creating a dynamic membership rule. So we are saying that any device which has a ZTD ID should be a part of this group, and onto this group we will be targeting all the ODJ device configuration profile, so that we don't have to add all the autopilot devices manually onto the group. It will be added automatically. This is wherein we talk about how to create a OU and delegate the 2K16 server permissions onto it. So no big deal. We just have to open up dsa.msc, right click on our domain, and then do a new, and then click on creating and then click on organizational unit. It's going to create a OU, and once the OU has been created, we have to name it, and then we have to so over here we created and we create right clicked on it, clicked on organizational unit. It will ask us for a name. We gave it the name Autopilot. Now we right clicked on it and clicked on delegate control. When we click on that, this window is going to open up. We are going to add a computer account, so we'll go into object types and click on computer, and then we will have to click on create a custom task to delegate, and then we will give it a full permission and full computer control, and then we will give the option of adding a computer object. So the 2K16 server is being given permissions over here, and we will enter the name of that server, 2K16 server, wherein the connector is installed, and we will say that okay, it should have full control over creating a computer object in this OU. That is what we are doing under delegation. Okay, once that is done, the other thing that we have to do is install the ODJ connector. So for installing the ODJ connector, what we'll have to do, it is like simple installation. So we have to go into Microsoft Intune and then Windows enrollment, and over here you have an option Intune connector for Active Directory. You have to click on that and just download the connector from there. Go to the server, go to the 2K16 server. Please keep in mind the prerequisite is it needs to be a 2K16 server or above. 2K12 or below would not work. So we just have to take the connector to that server, just double click on it, and then next finish. So not much configuration that has to be done while installing the ODJ connector. Once we install the ODJ connector, we have to configure it, and during the configuration we have to sign in to the ODJ connector. We have to sign in using a global admin account. Once we sign into the global admin account, the connector will show in the Intune portal as active, meaning that the 2K16 server is now able to communicate with the Intune service. So if you see the diagram over here, this is the 2K16 server wherein we're installing the connector. This is the Intune service. The Intune service is able to speak with the 2K16 server and able to locate it to forward the ODJ request from the device, because we are installing the connector over here and logging in using a global admin credential from this tenant. Okay. All right. So then we will see a service as well in the device wherein the connector is installed with the name Intune ODJ connector service. We have to make sure it's running and it is not in stopped state. Okay. And then this is wherein I'm just illustrating that the hardware hash has to be imported into the Autopilot profile. We will see that in the demonstration it was same as what we saw in the previous Nugget as well. We have to upload the hardware hash. Once the hardware hash is uploaded, the serial number of the device over here shows in. We can actually pre-assign this device to a user. So we have to click on assign user, and then we can assign a user over here so that the end user will not have to enter his username. He'll just have to enter his password. Okay, and this is a snippet of the last thing, that is the offline domain join profile. So we have to go into Microsoft Intune device configuration, and then we have to create a profile, and the properties we just have to name it. It's going to be Windows 10 and later, and over here you can see there is something called a domain join. So if you click on this drop down, you will see all the kinds of profiles like SCEP, PKCS and whatnot. So one of that option is domain join. When you click on domain join, there are three information that you have to provide. First is the computer name prefix. This is the naming convention which the end user is going to, which the device is going to follow. So if you're joining a device to the on-prem domain, usually we have a naming convention, right, that the devices will be named using this. So we can configure this in the domain join profile itself, and the device gets joined to the on-prem domain using this name. We will have to mention the name of the on-prem domain, and we will have to mention the name of the OU wherein the computer object needs to be created. Please keep in mind that in this OU, this is the OU wherein we have delegated the permission for the 2K16 server, so that the 2K16 server should be able to create a computer object for the end device in this OU. Okay, now let's just take a look over what the end user experience is. So let's just say the admin has done all these things. Okay, I am the end user, I get a fresh device. The hardware hash of the device was uploaded into the Intune portal by the Intune admin, and he has configured all the profiles. I am powering on my machine for the very first time. Please keep in mind that either this machine is in the this machine needs to be in the corporate network. That is how this machine will be able to ping or reach out to the on-prem domain controller. If I am powering on the laptop and if I am there on the internet, I will not be able to reach out to the domain controller, which was there in step 12, I guess. And the on-prem domain join will not happen and the process will fail. So when I'm powering on this laptop, the prerequisite is that, as you remember, the prerequisite was the device needs to be in direct line of sight with the domain controller, meaning the device needs to be in the device needs to be in the corporate network, long story short. So this doesn't work over VPN. Okay, so if that is the case, I'm powering on laptop for the first time, or I am resetting an existing laptop. Once I do that, the first screen that I get, and this is something which we cannot customize from Autopilot profile, that is the location, that is the region. I select that. It asks us the keyboard layout. I select that. It asks us for I'm sorry, it asks us for the keyboard layout over here. It asks us for the secondary layout. We select that, and then it checks for the autopilot service. This is wherein the autopilot DLL is talking with the DDS, trying to figure out that okay, there is an autopilot profile which is targeted, and then it will check which autopilot profile is targeted and to that ZTD ID, and the autopilot profile will come down to the device. Once it comes down, if and when it comes down to the device, you're going to get this customized screen when it says welcome to Contoso or welcome to in my case nuggetlabs.com or welcome to your company name. This is the customized company branding which comes up, which ensures that okay, the autopilot profile came down to the device. So once the autopilot profile comes down to the device, you are going to enter the username and password. You enter the username and password. You will not have to enter the username itself if the assignation was done, and then the end user enters the username, password, and then the authentication is done. The device reaches out to the Intune service, the Azure, and authentication is done. The device gets Azure AD registered, Azure AD joined, and then enrolled to Intune. So, provided the enrollment scope and everything is set, and the device had an Intune EMS license assigned to him. So, until now, this flow would be the same. This end user experience until here would be the same as what an end user would have experienced if it was normal autopilot. However, now once the ODJ policy comes down to the device would do a silent ping to the domain controller and it would undergo a reboot. So you'll see something like we'll continue to setting up your device after this reboot. The device undergoes a reboot. That is when it is doing a silent ping. The domain controller is doing that offline domain join blob. Over here you can see the ESP page as well, and which says that what are the steps that have been completed, what are the steps that is pending. And then finally after the reboot you will see this login page, and over here you can see that in the login page it gives me the option that sign in to Intune lab, and this Intune lab is the name of my on-prem domain. So if this option is saying, if you get an option saying that sign in to Intune lab, what the machine is trying to tell you is that you can sign in using a credential from Intune Lab. So obviously, if you are able to sign in using a credential from the on-prem domain, it means that you are joined to the on-prem domain. If the machine is not joined to the on-prem domain, it won't even give you the option of logging in using an credentials from on-prem domain, right? So this signifies that the machine is now on-prem domain joined. Okay, just one more thing. So let me just go back over here. This will be a useful piece of information. So, all right. So if you guys remember, the device gets the ODJ profile. The device reaches out to the Intune service asking for the ODJ blob. Intune service reaches out to the connector server, the man in the middle, with that request. Okay. So that request can be tracked over here, and once the domain controller creates the ODJ blob and the computer object is created over here, that request can also be tracked over here. How? We will see that in the logs of that 2K16 server. So let me go back. Okay, so this is that 2K16 server. I've opened up the event viewer logs. If I go to application and services logs and then ODJ connector service, then at 4:54:54 I can see that the ODJ blob request came down to this device from Intune service on the behalf of the end user's device. And this request is actually going to contain the same information as what was there in the Intune device configuration profile which was delivered to the device. It has the device ID. This is the Intune device ID. It has a request ID, it has activity ID, it has the domain name which we have configured in the offline domain join profile. On the device configuration profile, it has the domain name, and it has the naming convention which it needs to follow, which the end device needs to follow. The same thing is mentioned in the ODJ device configuration profile as well, as we saw. So if you remember in the this is the one. It has the naming configuration, the naming template, the name of the domain, and the OU. So it comes down to the device, and we can see it in the log. And it's saying that there are 7 characters over here. Okay, the event ID is 30120. Just keep that in mind. A few seconds later, or a few minutes later rather, the next log that is created in the same device, which this actually shows that okay, a device object was created, and this is an ODJ blob was created for the device, and a device object was also created. The event ID is 30140, and it is saying us the same thing. The device, this is the device ID for which the request was done. This is the name of the device. So by this was the, so it followed the naming convention, ND demo EAI, and after that it assigned it some arbitrary number and the blob data length and whatnot. So this event log is actually telling us that okay, a computer object has been created and the blob has been created as well. And for in the so the device, if you guys remember, the device got Azure AD joined. So an entry was created, and the device an entry was created, if you guys remember, when we uploaded the hardware hash, right? It pre-populated the entry, and a new entry is going to get created when the device is hybrid Azure AD joined, because that sync is going to happen using the Azure AD Connect. So you might be able to see two entries in the Azure for the same device. However, the second entry, the hybrid Azure AD join entry, is the one which is relevant, and the first entry might automatically get flushed. If not, then you can actually go ahead and delete it as well. This is a snippet of the device configuration profile. So this device configuration profile was delivered to the device. Everything happened fine. When I'm going to the device status, I can see that it is showing as succeeded. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it, guys. You just have to keep in mind this flow, and if you have this flow in mind, then we should be able to figure out where exactly we know the two logs that we have to check over here. And if at any point of time the device is not able to reach out to the Intune service or the domain service, we can take a netsh trace, and we can analyze the cab file to find out if there is any blockage, or if the device tried to reach out to some place and it was blocked for some reason. All right, guys. So that was all the theoretical stuff. I know it was a lot, and I apologize if it was kind of boring. But now let's just get on to the interesting stuff. So now let's just do a demo. So guys, this is my lab, and as you can see, I currently have four machines in this. I've turned off the SECM because I don't need it. The only machine that we are going to need during the course of this demo is the domain controller and a 2016 server, wherein we are going to install the AD connector as we had discussed in the previous slides. And this is the end machine. This is Windows 10. We will check the version, make sure that the version is fine. And this is wherein we are going to implement the autopilot. So first and foremost, let's just go to the end machine. Okay, before we do that, let me just show you guys the networking. So currently this is a machine where I'm at, and this is the IP address. And let me just show you guys the virtual switch manager. So I've created two switches. First is the lab switch. This is for internal communication. And second is the default switch. This is for external communication. That is for access to the internet. So my domain controller, if I go to the domain controller, you would be able to see that it has got two adapters, one from each switch. The lab switch is there because it needs to communicate with other devices in the domain. And the default switch is there because I have installed the Azure AD Connect tool in this device. So this tool is responsible for making any client machines hybrid Azure AD joined. So it's doing that sync. Therefore, in the domain controller, it has got two adapters, one from each switch. If we look at 2K16 server, it should also have a similar setup. It has a adapter from the lab switch because it needs to communicate with all the machines in the domain, and it has a adapter from the default switch because we are going to install the uh, Active Directory connector in this device, and the connector needs to talk with the Intune service over the internet. And finally, we have the end machine. If we check the end machine, it currently has only one NIC, that is the lab switch, because it needs to communicate with the domain. And this will also be needing one more adapter because it needs to be able to connect with the Intune service and the Autopilot service. So I'm going to provide it the default from adapter from the default switch, and then OK. All right. So if you guys remember correctly, the end machine needs to be in direct line of sight with the domain controller. That's why I have provided it a adapter from the internal switch, from the switch which is responsible for routing traffic within the domain, and I have provided it a network card from the switch which is responsible for providing it internet access. So this is a lab environment. However, if we don't have a lab environment, if we are doing it on the production on a physical machine, then I mean it's not necessary that we'll have to provide it two different switches. Just make sure that the device has open connectivity to the internet, the device is able to reach out to the Autopilot service. Please see the documentation, wherein if you have a firewall in place, then there are a lot of a bunch of ports that needs to be open, a bunch of URLs wherein the device should be able to reach out, and the device needs to be able to ping the on-prem domain. So there's a thing, and in case you guys reach, run out to any problems, the best thing there to do would be taking a netmon trace, uh, and it will give you that file. It will give you the cap file or the ETL trace wherein you can actually see that which are the endpoints the device tried to reach out to and where exactly it got blocked. Okay, so now that being said, let me just quickly go into this hybrid demo machine, which is my Windows 10 machine, and the first thing that we'll have to do right now is we will have to extract the hardware hash. So we are going to extract the hardware hash from this machine. Once the hardware hash is extracted, we are going to upload it into the Intune portal, and we are going to do a quick system reset of this device. Okay, so I am going to log into this machine, and I'm going to run the same script that we ran, the same command that we ran in the previous Nugget to generate the hardware hash. Once we have the hardware hash, we should be good. So the way to do that is we have to open up PowerShell. So let me do that now. We'll be opening PowerShell as an administrator, and we are going to generate the hardware hash now. So let's just go to the home directory, and first we'll have to set the execution policy. executionpolicy. What's the command? Execution policy. Okay, so executionpolicy. We can set it to unrestricted. Okay, yes, I want. And then we are going to get script. The name is get hyphen Windows Autopilot info. Let me check the spelling. Windows Autopilot info. Oops, what did I do wrong? Install. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to do the install script first. I have to install it. So it's CLS install. Okay. You have to make sure that the device has internet connectivity because it's going to download it from the internet. So it's changing the environment path variables now. It should go out and fetch that script, install it on the device. Yes, I want to. Oops, sorry. Yes, why? Okay, I'll do A for yes to all. So now it's installing the package get-windows autopilot info, as you can see. Okay, it's done. So the script has been installed. Now I can run the get hyphen Windows Autopilot info, and then the output file would be in the C drive. Let's just call it Hybrid AAD dot CSV. Okay, it ran successfully. So let me just go to the C drive and fetch that. Uh, all right, this is the CSV. Let me just paste it in the desktop. Yep. Okay. Before I do a system reset, let me just show you guys that this device is able to intunelab.com. It's able to ping my domain controller because it has got two NICs right now. So once we do a system reset, the device again will. So what is happening is I have configured the DHCP in my environment. Therefore, it is getting this IP address. It is getting an IP address in the internal NIC from the DHCP, which is installed in the domain controller. Okay, all right. So now let's just do a system reset. We will remove everything. Nope, nope, nope. Before I do a system reset, before I forget, I need to remove this file from here and put it here. So let me just put the file here. Okay, now I can do a system reset. Okay. Yep, remove everything. I don't want to keep anything. I just want a device to come out of the box, remove files and clean the drive. So it might take around 45 minutes to an hour for, if not more, for this device to do a complete system reset. So while it does that, we will do the other stuff. Okay, reset. All right, so the reset has begun. So by the time the reset happens, let me just fetch the Hybrid Azure AD join.csv. Okay, and let me just copy this, go to my base machine. Okay, so this is the file that we have to reference to. Now let me just go to the Intune portal. I'm going to go to Microsoft Intune, devices. No, not devices. Let me just upload the hardware hash first. So I'm going to go into the Windows enrollment, and then I'm going to go into devices. So there are a couple of devices right now. We can just ignore them. I just did a practical on them earlier. So let me just open up this file first. Let me just show you what this file contains. And then when we upload it, we'll be able to see the same thing. So the file is supposed to contain the device serial number, product ID, and hardware hash. You can see that this is the device serial number. There is no product ID, this is blank, and this is the hardware hash. That is absolutely fine. We don't necessarily need the product ID. The device serial number should work for us. The device serial number is 9052. It starts with 9052. Okay, so I don't want to save it. All right, so now let me just import the hardware hash file. So it is Hybrid Azure AD. This is the file. Me to open. It's going to make sure that everything is correctly formatted, and it should be in this format, the content of the file. So I'm just going to do an import. It's going to import the devices, and once the device is imported, the device should show up over here. So it might take a couple of minutes for the import to happen. So let's just wait on that. Once the import is done, we will see that import is done successfully. Also, okay, so once this is done, what we will do is, or while this is being done, let me just go into the deployment profiles. I have one profile created already, which is Hybrid Autopilot Profile 1. Let me just create one more profile. Let me call this Hybrid AUTOPILOT 2. The description is optional. By default, this profile can only be applied to Autopilot devices synced from Autopilot service. That is fine. All right. Deployment mode, we are doing user driven. We are not doing self deploying. For self deploying, the user intervention is not needed, and we have the option of skipping this as well. However, for self deploying, it doesn't give us the option of doing an hybrid Azure AD join, I believe. And I believe that for self deploying mode, we need to have a physical machine because it needs a TPM chip. I'm not sure about that part. However, we are going to do a user driven join. We are going to do a hybrid Azure AD join, and Microsoft software license term, we can hide it. Privacy settings, we can hide it. And while we discuss this, we can see that one Windows Autopilot device was updated successfully. We will check on that later. We can hide everything. We can make the user an administrator. That's fine. Allow white glove OOBE. I'm not going to do a white glove right now. We can set up a different session for white glove. Right now, we are only doing a hybrid Azure AD join. Everything looks good. Apply device naming template. We are not going to do that. We're going to do a next. Scope tags not needed. We are going to do a next. We will make the assignments later on. We are going to do a next and then create. So hybrid autopilot profile 2 has been created. I had the similar settings in profile 1 as well. Let me just show you for the sake of it. So everything, I mean, the name is hybrid autopilot profile 1. It was also user driven, and join type was hybrid Azure AD. Everything was hidden. User account was an administrator. White glove was set to no. Apply device template was already set to no because we don't have that option in hybrid Azure AD autopilot. Okay, so once this is done, now what I'll have to do is the autopilot profile is created, the device has been uploaded. Let's just go and see whether the device has been uploaded or not. And I believe this is the device 9052 as we saw in the CSV file. Now what we'll have to do, we'll have to add this device to a group. Now there are two ways of doing that. If you refer to the previous nugget, you will remember that we can use the ZTD we can use the ZTD ID tag, or we can create a static group. So if you use the ZTD ID tag, you can use the dynamic group itself, and you won't have to. So each time you upload an autopilot serial number or autopilot hardware hash, the device would auto populate in that group. If you don't want to do that, if you want to add it manually, you might as well do that as well. So I am just going to go ahead with the easier and the faster approach. So this is our group HAP. I am just going to go into the members, and I'm going to add a member, and my member is I think it was 9052 or something like that. Yeah, 9052. I'm going to add that device over here. So my device is now added onto this deployment. I mean, added onto this security group. Okay. All right. Perfect. Now what needs to be done? Now our device is a part of the HAP group. So what we have to do now is we have already created a hybrid Azure AD join autopilot profile, the one that we just created right now. This one, the deployment profile. So all we have to do is we have to deploy this profile to that group, and we will be creating a we will be creating a device configuration profile for ODJ join, and we will be deploying that to the group as well. So I think I have one. It's called HAP. Let me just show you guys how to make one. So if I can call it HAP2. The description is optional. Platform is going to be Windows 10 and later. Profile type is going to be domain join. So over here we'll have to enter the computer name, we will have to enter the domain name, and we will have to enter the OU. So when we all know that when a device is joined to the on-prem domain, a computer object is created of that device, and resides in an OU. So we'll have to provide the path of that OU over here wherein the account will be created, the computer account. And once this profile is created, we will deploy it to the same static group that we have created a few whiles back, static or dynamic, whichever you'd like to create, that is HAP. So while this happens, let me just uh, uh, show you guys one more quick thing. So we'll have to go to device enrollment, Windows enrollment, And this is from wherein we download and install the Intune connector for Active Directory. So we have to click on add, and from here we can download the connector. So I have already downloaded the connector. So let me just, and this can only be installed in a 2016 server. So the reset is still happening. So while the reset happens, let me just quickly go into the 2016 server and install the ODJ connector over there. All right. So this machine is joined to the on-prem domain and has connectivity to the internet as well. So I am going to use other account and Craig S password @123. Okay. So now let me just get hold of the installer file that I just now downloaded, and I'm going to move it to this device. And then we are going to install the connector. Once the connector is installed, a log file is created. It is self-explanatory. It just tells you that a user logged. So once we install the connector, it is going to, I mean, we have to make that connection between the server wherein we are installing the connector. If you remember the diagram correctly, if you the server wherein we're installing the connector and the server and the Intune service. So obviously we will have to log into the connector using a global admin. So the and that is all shows in the log file. So let me just right click on the ODJ connector and run it as an administrator, and then we will configure it. So it's run as an administrator always. Okay, yes. Let's just wait for the, yeah, there you go. Repair. Okay, so already the connector was there in this machine. So let me just do an uninstall. I removed it from the control panel. Let me just remove it from here as well, from the GUI. Okay, the uninstall was successfully completed. Okay, I don't need the updates right now. Okay, anyways, so let me do this. Let me just do a quick reboot of this machine, and then we will come back and install the connector. So let me just go into the command prompt and do a shutdown space /r. Okay, so let me just wait for this uninstallation. So I already did the uninstallation, but for some reason the GUI still gave me that option. So probably it was not flushed correctly. So let me just wait for the reboot to be done, and then we will come back and proceed with the ODJ connector installation. Meanwhile, while this happens, let's just check on our the other machine. Okay, let's just see where this is at. Okay, so it's still going on. Let's just give it some time. I agree to the EULA. I do an install. It's fairly straightforward. I just have to do a next finish. Let me just get rid of the older files that I have in the desktop. I don't need them anymore. All right. Not much configuration to be done here other than just logging into it using an global admin, and then we should be good. Okay, so let's just click on configure now. All right, so as you can see, not much here, just need to sign into it. The interface looks like a lot if you compare it with the connector we installed during PKCS or SCAP, just in case you have had a chance to go through those nuggets. All right, so I click on sign in, a tab opens up, an explorer should give me the option of signing into it using my username and password. All right, something is going on. Let's just give it a moment. Okay, so let me just, it has auto-picked my username. However, if you're doing it for the first time, you might have to enter your UPN and password. Make sure it has a proper Intune license assigned to it. And that should give us a prompt saying that it was successful. Okay, so the Intune connector for Active Directory successfully enrolled. Let me just do an OK over here, and then let me just close this. So this is the log file. It gets auto created in the desktop. Let's just take a look over what this log file has to say. All right, all right, all right. It'll just tell you that the installation was successful, and over here it says successfully enrolled, and I think the time is in GMT. However, you can see that the date is correct, and it will just tell you whatever is going on in the background. This is what you should actually be looking for, the ODJ connector UI information. Okay, so once this is done, we can go into the services. .msc. There would be a service which should be created for this connector. Intune ODJ service connector. This is the one. It is running. Looks good. Now let me just show you guys in the event viewer. So there are a lot of events created in the ODJ connector every minute. So we need to understand which of them are relevant and which of them are not. So I'll just show you guys that once. So we'll have to go to event viewer, then application services logs. Now you can see something called an ODJ connector service. So we'll click on that, and over here you can see that there were a few errors, which is fine. You can just ignore the errors. So we will see these very often. 30150 and 30121. As you can see, the time is 7:24:45 seconds. In UTC, but this is created every minute, a lot of them, and these are, well, not much relevant, so we can just ignore them for now. So this is the one which says that the connector was installed and configured successfully. Uh, 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 yeah. Not much to see here for now, but yes, we will be coming over here and we will be checking the relevant logs as we saw in the presentation once the device comes out of the box and once the connector actually processes a request. So that's all we needed to see from the machine for now. So let me quickly go back into the portal, and let me just go back into device enrollment, Windows enrollment, and uh, Intune connector. All right, so it has got two entries. I'm not exactly sure how to remove the old one, but yeah, anyhow, let me see what filter. It will just, yeah, okay, we can do this probably. Yeah, it will remove the old one. Okay, because I don't think we have an option of deleting the old entry of the connector. Anyways, this is the active connector. Looks good. The All right, so now let me just go into the domain controller and do whatever needs to be done over in the domain controller. So what needs to be done in the domain controller, if you guys remember, we just need to create an OU, delegate the OU, and give the computer account correct privileges over the OU. So let me just wait for the connection to be established. Okay, so password at the rate 123. All right, so I have opened up I mean, all you have to do is you have to go into dsa.msc, and then you will be seeing the OUs over here. Okay, you can just right click and click and do a create a new OU. I just did that and I just named it Hybrid Autopilot. There are two entries already over here. You can just ignore them. These are all stale entries. So once you right click over here in the domain and create a new organizational unit by clicking over here, it will show up over here. Then you have to right click on it and click on delegate control. Then the delegate control wizard will open up. We are going to do a next, and then we are going to add the server account to K16, and the object types I am going to select the computer, and then check names. Okay, add, nope, sorry, and then next, and then this is fine. Delegate the following common task. This is fine. Okay, we will do a create a custom task to delegate, and then we will give it the option to manage the computer objects, because it's because the connector is actually going to create a computer object in this OU. And I'll do a next, and I'll give it full control, and I'll do it next, and then I'll do a finish. So the OU has been created now. I just need to know the name of this OU and the FQDN of the domain controller. So the FQDN is dc.intunelab.com. So if we know the FQDN, if we know the OU, that's all we need to create the device configuration profile. So if I go into the device configuration profile, and if I go into properties, if I go into settings, first we'll have to give a computer naming prefix. So this is the naming convention that the computer is going to follow once it comes out of the box. So let me just call it Hybrid AAD EAI. Hybrid Azure AD, everything about Intune. The domain name is intunelab.com, and the organizational unit you have to provide it in this format: dc is equal to intunelab, dc is equal to comp, and the OU is hybrid autopilot. Okay, all right. So let me just save this. I have already assigned it to the HAP group, which is fine. All right, so now all we have to do is wait and take a look over how the machine behaves when the machine comes out of the box experience. Other than that, our 2K16 server is ready. The connector is showing online. It should be able to process everything, and our domain controller is also ready. The OU has been created. It should be able to connect with the 2K16 server. Our profiles are ready. Let's just quickly review them. So let me just go back to device enrollment, Windows enrollment, the devices, and this is the device that I have. Over here you can see its status automatically changed from assigned or not assigned to assigned, because we have assigned the autopilot profile to the HAP group. So if I click over here, you can see everything looks fine. I can actually do something. I can click on this device and do a assign user and pre-populate a user over here. Therefore, I won't have to enter a username during the out of the box. I'll just have to provide the password. So let me just do a save over here. This has been saved. One more quick thing, if you haven't noticed it already, as you already know, the device is currently doing the reset. So the autopilot option, so the autopilot has still not started yet. However, if you go into Azure AD, and let me just do it, see the last 7 days, you can see that device is already pre-populated over here. All right, so you can see that the OS version join type, it is Azure AD joined. So a pre-populated device object is created over here, which becomes Azure AD joined. However, the device is not enrolled yet, obviously, because the device is not online yet. So you cannot see the devices over here at this point of time. So let me just delete the old entries which are no longer being used. Delete. All right, looks way better now. All right, so in the Azure AD devices, we saw that the device is already pre-populated like it does in case of normal autopilot as well. And this is where the ZTD ID is tagged with the device entry. So this looks fine. Let's just review our autopilot profile deployment profile one. So we have the autopilot deployment profile 1 and 2. We might as well, I mean, both are the same, so we might as well delete one of them. We have already seen what is the content. So if you go to assigned devices, you can actually see all the devices that are assigned to this profile. So what we don't assign the devices manually over here. What we do is we let me just walk you through the process once again. So we have created the deployment profile here, and the deployment profile in the properties we have assigned it to a group, and all the devices that are there in this group will show up over here under assigned devices. So this is the one that we are focused on. These two were there earlier itself. And if we take a look over the properties, the same thing, nothing fancy. Hybrid Azure AD join is what we have done. And yeah, that's all. So now we just have to wait it out. We just have to wait for the device to show up. I mean, the autopilot reset to happen, and then see how exactly it looks from there. And as I said, I don't believe we have an option of deleting the old entry. I think it gets flushed automatically in a while. So yeah, so it's still at 18%. Once it comes out of the box, then we will take a look and see that whether the custom branding is coming up or not, which would show that the device is having the device was able to reach out to the autopilot service and the profile got delivered to the device, and then we will see how exactly it follows from there. Okay, so it has been about an hour, and now if I check, I can see that this is the very first screen after the out of the box experience. So if I switch on a new laptop, this is the very first screen that I'm going to get after I connect to the internet. So before I go ahead, let me just show you guys a quick trick. So in this screen, before I click on yes, I'm going to press Shift and F10. This is a very useful trick in case you have to do any troubleshooting. This actually opens up the command prompt. And now there is anything that you want to check, you can check it using the CLI. So the first thing that I want to check is the IP configuration of this machine. So if I do a IP config, I can see that there are two adapters. This is what I'm interested at, and I can see that it has got the IP address from the DHCP, and it has is it able to ping the domain controller? Let me just check that. Yes, it is. So this is a mandatory prerequisite, and we just have to make sure that the machine is in sight with the domain controller. So it looks good at this point of time. Let's just see what happens. So let's just do a yes over here, and we have to see if the autopilot profile is reaching to this device or not. So I mean, if the device is able to reach out to the domain controller, does not necessarily mean that the autopilot profile has reached the device. The device needs to have open access to the internet. If not open, if behind a firewall, there shouldn't be anything that is blocking its access to the autopilot service. So these screens that you're seeing right now is something that at this point of time we cannot disable or enable from the autopilot profile. So the region selection and the language selection and the secondary keyboard layout, these things are mandatory, so we have to go through these. We cannot disable them or hide them from the autopilot profile. However, we will see whether the autopilot profile is hitting the device or not. So we have done something like a pre-assignation of user. So the device is already assigned to Tom. So we will see that whether it asks us for a username or whether it pre-populates the username with the name of Tom. If it does, then we are sure that the device is getting the autopilot profile. If for some reason it is failing at this point of time, what you guys can do is you guys can open up the command prompt, take the netmon, use the netsh command, probably take a fiddler log, or I mean we just have to identify where exactly the device is reaching out to at this phase if you get any errors. However, if there is an open internet, or if even if we are behind a firewall and every port and every nothing is blocked in the firewall as far as the prerequisite is concerned, then there shouldn't be a problem. So let's just give it a couple of minutes and then see what exactly comes up in the next page. Okay, guys, so the autopilot profile seems to be hitting the device because this is the page that came up automatically. Therefore, Tom is already pre-populated. I don't have the option of logging with any other user. So I am just going to enter his password. All right, let me just see his password. I don't remember. Uh, okay. Okay, I just entered the password, and now we will pay a close attention to what exactly is happening in the device. So not much user intervention required now. However, we'll see what are the screens that are coming. So this is wherein the things change and the flow change. If we compare an out of the box experience of a normal autopilot device versus an hybrid Azure AD joined. So we'll have to see exactly at what point the device gets the on-prem domain or the ODJ blob, and it gets it gets joined to the on-prem domain. Okay, so now you can see it says that will continue setting up your device after this reboot. So there is a reboot that is going to happen, and if you remember in the presentation, we were seeing that there is a reboot that happens. So we are expecting that this is the reboot that is happening after the offline domain join blob came to the device. So we'll know more after the reboot is done and once the device is back up. So let's just hold on to our horses and then see what's the behavior. Okay, so now you see that we get the ESP page. So let's just see what it says. I'm going to expand this, and it says that securing your hardware complete, joining your organization's network complete, registering your device for mobile management complete, preparing your device for mobile management. It's working on it. So we will monitor the ESP page, and we will see what follows. Okay, so the ESP page is still going on. While this happens, let me just quickly go back into the portal and show you guys that if I'm going into Microsoft Intune devices, all devices, now I can see an entry of a device. It does not follow the naming convention that we expect it to. However, the device seems to be enrolled now, and that is when it is going to get the ODJ blob, and it's going to get the policy, the device configuration policy that we have created over here. So if I go into the device status, I can see that it shows as failed, but let's just give it a couple of minutes and then see what exactly comes up. Okay, guys. So it says that preparing your device for mobile management is completed, and now it's doing a device setup. It gives me an option saying device setup. We can continue anyway because ESP has not blocked it. However, let me just do a show status and then see what exactly is showing. So I have not deployed any PKC. I mean, I had a PKCS profile deployed. However, I removed the assignment. Therefore, there were no certificates or anything that were deployed to the device as mandatory. So, all right. So let's just try to log in here, and this is the moment of truth. So now, there you go. It says sign into intunelab.com. It is the on-prem domain. So let me just try to log in using Intune Lab slash Greg S. This is the on-prem Greg S account and not the local account. And the password for that, and what we are going to check is the host name of this machine, whether it has followed the same naming convention or not, and then we will go and check the logs in the connector to see whether the ODJ, okay, something happened, so to see whether the ODJ blob came and whether it was processed or not as per our expectation. And then we will see the deployment from the deployment from the Intune portal. So it says connecting. Okay, all right. So we are back on. Let's just wait for the connection to happen. We'll log in, and then we'll first thing we'll see is the local host name of the device, and we'll ensure that the machine is joined to the on-prem domain. It surely is, because we are logging into it using an on-prem credential, but we just want to be double sure, and we'll go into the domain controller, and then we'll see whether an computer object has been created in the pre-delegated OU or not. All right, so okay, so I just want to be sure that I'm logging in using a domain account. Therefore, I want to put this in Intune Lab slash Greg S and the password. All right. Okay, so finally the desktop has loaded. So, all right, let's just go to the command prompt and let's just see check out the host name. Okay, I can do a yes here. And then host name. It's running a tad bit slow, but that's all right. Come on. Okay, so it is using the naming convention that we have put in HAADEAI, and then I'm not exactly sure, to be honest, how is this generated. Probably it's the serial number, I'm not exactly sure. Or but anyways, so the device seems to be joined to the on-prem domain, and the device seems to be following the naming convention that we have provided it. Let's just yeah, okay, it has joined to the intunelab.com. So now let me just quickly go into the domain controller and then take a look over the organizational unit that I had in place. So yeah, so now if I'm going into the hybrid autopilot OU, I can see that there is one more computer over here. And if I go into the uh, uh, device enrollment, Windows enrollment, and let me just quickly show you guys the status of the device. So this is the device, and if I click on that device, if I scroll down, I can see that associated Intune device, the name here has changed now. Earlier the name that you were seeing over here was desktop hyphen something, and now the last contact time is showing as 6:58. That is a couple of minutes back. Earlier it was not showing as contacted. This means that the device had the autopilot profile and the device responded to it. If I go into deployment profiles over here, assigned devices, yeah, nothing much here. Okay. The only thing that we have to wait on for now is under device configuration. The expectation is that the Hybrid Azure AD and Autopilot, this should show as succeed. Yeah, there you go. Surely enough, it now shows as succeeded as at 6:58 p.m. That is around a couple of minutes back. So everything is in accordance. The last thing that we need to check is, let's just go into the 2K16 server and then open up the event viewer and then track the logs for the ODJ connector. So, yeah, let me go into the ODJ connector service. So, surely enough, the ODJ blob would have come over here and it would have processed it. So, let's just try to track it down. As I said, 30121 and 50 are something that we can actually ignore. So, we will have to look for 30. Instead of 21, I'm looking for something as 20. So this might be a little hard to find, so let me just do it this way. Filter current logs and then 30120, 30120 and 30140. I think these two are the relevant logs. Yeah, so I can see that there are two logs, 120 and 140. The first one that is created is 120. So if I take a look over this log, I can, let's just expand this and see what this says. This is the activity ID. There is a device ID. Let's just check the device ID of our device and see if this is relevant. So I am going into, if my mouse works fine. Yes, there you go. All right. So this is our device, and the device ID ends with 571D, and that is what we should be seeing over here. Yeah, 571D. So we're looking at the right entry for the right device, and over here it has got it. This is a incoming request for the ODJ profile. So the device receives the ODJ profile, and then it reaches out to the Intune service. The Intune service sends that request. If you remember the flow in the diagram, the Intune service sends that request to the connector. This is the incoming request for the connector. The device ID is there, the domain name is there, wherein the connector is going to forward it to the DC as mentioned in our profile, the ODJ profile. This only contains the computer prefix because right now the computer does not have any name. It just has the prefix as mentioned in our profile, and the suffix count. There are 8 characters over here, hence it shows that. So this over here shows successful. Everything looks good as of this moment, and this is at 6:05:24. And the next one is 6:05:26. That is a few seconds later. This is the next log. The ID is different, it is 140, and let's just see what this says. Times elapsed, request ID, that is fine. Again, the same device ID 571D, that is we are looking at the right device. And now this is the request after the object has been created, and this is the device name which has been given to the device, which looks in accordance with the host name and what we see. And then the blob data, instance ID, everything is fine. Everything looks good. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So that is what we were expecting to see in the ODJ connector. So logs. So in case there is some failure. Let's just say that the autopilot profile reached the device, but for some reason the on-prem join did not happen. So these are the two logs that we have to look for. So the first log shows the incoming of the request, and the second log shows that it was done successfully. So if you see one of them, you know what to check. You know that in the OU probably there is some permission not correctly created, or I mean the delegation of control has not been done correctly or something like that. So that is what I mean, that would be the logic behind troubleshooting at that point. But yeah, more or less this is the ODJ connector service, is what these are the logs that we have to refer to. That's all you have to see in this server. So from the end device we have already seen everything looks fine. If you check the w workplace join and all those logs, you will be seeing the normal flow, which shows that the device was joined to the on-prem domain. However, at this point of time, I'm not expecting that the device is hybrid Azure AD joined, because that would happen when the Azure AD Connect runs its sync. So let's just do this. I'm not exactly sure how long that is going to take, but let's just open up a PowerShell console, run a sync from here, and by the time we are done checking all the other things, the hybrid Azure AD join sync should have happened. So let's just do a start hyphen AD sync AD sync cycle. This should initiate a sync. Okay, it is successful. We'll have to wait it out. However, let's just go and see the what's the device entry and how it looks. So if I go into all devices, this is the device. It is now compliant, enrolled by Tom at 704, which is a few minutes. No, not enrolled. This is the last check-in. And if I go into Azure AD devices, let me just filter it for 7 days. Over here, you will be seeing that there are two entries for the device, and the sync has also happened. So this is the first entry for the device. This is the Azure AD joined entry. So if you remember, we had this entry right from the starting when we uploaded the hardware hash. However, right when we uploaded the hardware hash, and it was not having the name of the device, it was just having the serial number. However, this entry has always existed. This is the second entry which got created, and which says that hybrid Azure AD joined because it has been synced by the Azure AD Connect tool. So uh, you can see here that this is the other machine wherein I did the practical, and over here also I can see that there are two entries, Azure AD joined and hybrid Azure AD joined. So the Azure AD join happened first, obviously, and the hybrid Azure AD join happened later when the sync was done. So in some of the cases, I have seen that this entry gets removed automatically, the Azure AD joined entry. However, in some cases, I see that these entries lie behind and are not cleaned up. However, these two entries are not what we have to refer to, or not are the relevant ones. These two are the relevant ones, the ones that shows hybrid Azure AD joined, and you'll be seeing that the sync time. I mean, these two entries are actually going to check in, and the check-in time is going to be in accordance with the current time. So, what else? I think that's all I had to show you guys. If we just check the device here, yeah, it looks fine. All the information is updated. I haven't pushed any application. Device compliance looks good. Device configuration. The only thing that we have pushed is the device configuration profile. No app configuration profile is pushed, so it should all be fine. And managed apps. Okay, there are a few managed apps which are made available to the device. However, there are a few required installs as well. So obviously ESP was not blocked at that page, therefore it all looked fine. So there you go. That's what hybrid Azure AD join Autopilot is. Uh, Few prerequisites, especially the fact that the device needs to have direct line of sight with the domain controller, and it needs to have access to the Intune service. So if you're trying this out in your lab, as I said, that you can have two switches and then set it up accordingly, or you can set it up in one switch itself. You'll have to install the role that I discussed earlier in the domain controller. If it's a physical machine, still you can work it out. Just need to make sure that there is no problem from connectivity point of view, because this is the most common error that we will usually be seeing as far as the demonstration is concerned, or as far as the practical is concerned. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's all I wanted to tell you guys, and wanted to make you guys aware that hybrid Azure AD Join Autopilot exists now with 1809 Windows 10 version or above, and this is something which is taking the autopilot deployment to a whole new zero touch deployment level, because it's just, I mean, powering on the laptop and getting into a state wherein the machine has all the applications, all the configurations, and even joined to the on-prem domain is just like a next level of automation, or next level of zero touch experience, if you'd call it. So that's all I wanted to discuss with you guys on this nugget, and this on top of the previous nugget that we did on normal autopilot should help us understand how exactly we can reduce the IT overhead and how we can reach to that seamless zero touch deployment model. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's all I wanted to illustrate on this nugget, and I really hope that this has been informative for you. I would like to thank you for viewing. This is your friend Saurabh Sarkar signing off.